Hello there, fellow classic comic collectors. I'm Scott Harris King, and this is my first attempt at doing a live stream on here. I have no idea, honestly, if it's working. I'm doing it through StreamYard, which is supposed to be sending it to YouTube, so I'm going to assume that it's working. I've got a couple things on the docket today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about multi-packs, and then I'm also going to talk a little bit about my comic book. There's some functionality here that I need to test this weekend coming up. I had mentioned this at the beginning of my previous video, but this weekend coming up, there's what's called the Stay at Home Con. It's a comic book convention, but it's all online. And so on Sunday at 10:30, I'm doing a live stream for 45 minutes there. Everyone's welcome to join. I'll be talking about whatever people want me to talk about. I'll be talking about making my comic, but also be talking about collecting comics, some of the different comics and things that have had an influence on my work. And just, anyone that has any questions can show up and ask the questions, and we'll talk about it. So I'm going to be talking about some of that a little bit later, because I do need to test like the screen sharing function here to make sure that works. I also just need to test things like whether the audio is working here. I'm not currently using a headset or a microphone. It should be fine. This is how I record all of my videos, but again, I do normally use the audio from my phone camera instead of my computer. Hi, Kyle. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping in. Good to see that I think this is actually working, because you never know. We'll start off. I'm going to be talking a little bit about multi-packs. And for those of you watching later, I know Kyle already knows this because he's old school like I am, but back in the day, comics, sometimes you could go to stores, grocery stores, or convenience stores, department stores a lot of times, and they'd have these packs of comics where you get 2 or 3 or 5 comics in a bag, and they'd be discounted. It was usually just 1 cent off, but you could get these packs. Originally, the packs were done, I think they started, the earliest ones I've seen are from the very early 60s, and they were done kind of with leftover books that hadn't sold, and so they would pack them there. There were basically 2 kinds of multi-packs: leftover books that people hadn't been able to, like vendors hadn't been able to sell, and they were trying to sell sort of as back issues. But then also there were things that were coming directly from the publisher for the same reason. So when they'd get the comics returned, they'd pack them in these multi-packs and try and sell them at a discount. Now, later on in the 70s, companies, mainly Whitman, made deals with the publishers so that they could get first-run comics printed specifically to sell in multi-packs. And this sort of got phased out pretty late in the game. The last time I really remember seeing multi-packs was in the 90s, and there'd be a lot of like really junky books at that point. But I have a real soft spot for the older multi-packs, stuff from the 60s, the 70s, the early 80s that I remember seeing as a kid. There's a great bit of comics history in these multi-packs. I love this sort of ephemera. Now, some people take these packs now because there are still some, in existence, and you can buy them on secondary markets like eBay. And some people buy them and they'll open them because the comics inside haven't been touched. So a lot of times, if the bag hasn't been handled too roughly, the comics inside will be high grade. So they'll open the bag, they'll take the comics out, and then they'll like press them and submit them to CGC. And to me, I understand it, but to me it's kind of a cynical money ploy, because you're ruining the history of the multi-pack. You can get any of these comics cheaper just by getting a loose copy. There's tens of thousands of loose copies of all these old comics, but finding them still in the multi-pack is really hard to do. There are very few of them still around, particularly the older vintage ones. So to ruin those to make a few extra dollars, to me, I would never open a multi-pack. If I want something to read, if I want a copy of these to read, I can get reading copies much cheaper than the multi-pack. So I only have a few multi-packs, but I do want to show them off. I'm going to show them off kind of in the order of how cool I think they are. I've got 6 multi-packs in my collection. And the first of these multi-packs is this one here. It's a 5-pack of G.I. Joe second prints. So when G.I. Joe, I completely agree, Kyle. It's like I've seen people that have opened them, and I've actually had debates with people that think that, oh, comics are to be read and they should never be enclosed in something like this, and you should immediately rip them open. And it's like, if I need a second print of G.I. Joe #2, I can get that for like nothing. But if I want a multi-pack, it's not quite so easy. Although, to be honest, I paid almost nothing for this as well. My story behind this is I was at a comic shop probably 5 or 6 years ago, and I was looking through the dollar bin, and they had one whole bin that was all these G.I. Joe 5-packs. And so I bought several of them because I just think they're so cool. Mostly I've given them away over the years to various people because I think they're a neat gift. So I think this is the only one I have left. It's got the second print of 5 different issues. If you flip it over, it's number 12 that's on the back. And G.I. Joe had a lot of multi-packs, a lot of second printings and things like that. So the G.I. Joe packs are relatively common. There's some of the reprint packs that are easier to find than others, even some of the original Star Wars ones, because they printed like over 1 million of them. There's some vendors that still have a lot of the unopened packs, or the reprints of like Star Wars 1 to 3 and 4 to 6 was in a separate pack. So I don't really collect G.I. Joe, but when I was a kid, G.I. Joe was a big deal growing up in the 80s. So my first issue of G.I. Joe, I think, was 35. So I do have a soft spot. G.I. Joe #2, for those who don't know, at the time, #2 was the expensive issue. Like, it was the hottest thing. I had started collecting less than 3 years after this came out, and it was $55 for a first print of #2. And that's because they didn't realize what a big success it was going to be. So when they printed #2, they didn't have the sales figures yet from #1, and they grossly underprinted it, so it was really hard to find. So they rushed all these second prints of issue 2 out so people could read it. And I remember when I was in 7th grade, there was a kid in my class who collected G.I. Joe, and someone else in my class took the second print and they used like an eraser or something, and they wet the page and erased the second print from the bottom, into tricking him into thinking it was a first print. But of course, I knew what was happening when I saw it, and we sorted that out. But yeah, so here's my G.I. Joe 5-pack from the mid 80s. It's probably 84, 85. Yeah, it's a good point, Kyle. One thing with these multi-packs, there's a couple things in terms of value. There's some of them, they're like baseball card packs in some ways, where they'll have some of the older ones, instead of, this one is all G.I. Joe, but some of the older ones are a mix, and we're going to see some of those later on. And we'll see some of the multi-packs later on where there's a mix of comics. So if you have one, particularly if it's in the window where you can see like a big key, that's like a really cool deal. A second print bag, or is the Canadian edition? It's a good question. I'm pretty sure it's a second print. Although it is an interesting question. When I look through, I'd have to compare them, but there seems to be some text missing from the box there. One thing that's interesting is that if you look at like the number 12, let's see if I can hold this up close enough to see. It's got here, it's got the copyright with the date and stuff from Marvel. The #2 does not have that. So I'm not really sure, but I can do a little research and find out for sure. I'm pretty confident that it's a second print, but it's possible it could be the Canadian edition. So my next bag here is it's a bag inside a bag. I bought this from a dealer so there's an extra bag on the outside to protect it. But it's Battlestar Galactica, and it's issues number 5, 6, and 7. So we can see there, number 5. Now these Whitman packs at the time had a bad reputation because people had the mistaken impression that the Whitman books were second printing, but all the modern research that I've seen indicates that they were actually first prints that were done specifically for Whitman, and thus they're just as real as the regular edition. This was part of I got a couple different multi-packs from someone, and this was kind of a throw-in because I was paying a fair amount for a different multi-pack that I really wanted, and they offered me this one for $7 as a throw-in. Battlestar Galactica was a show that I really loved as a child in reruns. And so even though I don't really collect this comic either, just having the cool logo in the bag for that amount of money, it was a no-brainer for me to throw that in. This is the one I was actually buying from that dealer that I wanted to spend a bit of money on, which was Micronauts numbers 1, 2, and 3. So this is the first issue and first comic book appearance of the Micronauts. Micronauts was a big deal for me when I was a kid. I loved Micronauts. And so, again, there's still a bit of a lingering stigma with the Whitman editions, but in fact, in terms of variants, there's far fewer Whitman copies than there are of the regular edition. I say that with some of these, it's a little hard to tell. Are there really fewer of the things like Micronauts? I don't know. I think there are, but no one really has any numbers that I've seen in terms of print runs or sales figures. But because I think of the stigma, I was able to get a good deal on this. It's got issues 1, 2, and 3 all unopened, still in the pack. And again, as a Micronauts fan, I really wanted to have issue 1, so I thought this was a really cool way to get this. So here comes those are sort of multi-packs that I think are cool, but I don't collect any of those books. They're just things that I have as part of my collection because they're neat. These other 3 multi-packs, though, are older, and they're all titles that I collect. So they're kind of more important to me. The first here, it's a 2-issue Archie multi-pack. See, it's 49 cents for 2 comics. The cover price is 25 cents for the comic. So you're saving 1 penny. And this side is Jughead 228. And then on the other side, it's Archie 235. Whoops. So yeah, really happy to get these 25 cents. So I haven't really looked this up, but I'm guessing this is 1974. Might be 75. That's when things were about 25 cents or around that period. Next one is from a little bit earlier. It's right at the beginning of 74 when things were still 20 cents. The cover dated 74, so actually printed in 73. This is a 3-pack when the cover price was still 20 cents. And on this side, we have Jughead number 224. And on this side, it's Life with Archie number 141. So I collect both of these titles. I'm trying to put together complete runs of both Life with Archie and Jughead. I do have both for that last pack and this pack. I have reading copies of both of them. So these are doubles for me. But having them in these packs is just so neat. This would have come out again. It's cover dated January 74. Would have come out at the end of 73. I was born in 73. So it's just really neat to have this kind of history. And finally, this is the one that probably most people will care about. It's a DC 3-issue super pack. I think this is from 73. On On this side is Supergirl number 4, which is the main reason I bought this, because I do collect Supergirl. I have another copy of this issue. And then I think the thing that more people will be interested in is on the back. It's Detective Comics 433. The book in the middle is an issue of Star Spangled War Stories. I have a complete run of that. I mean, I have a complete run of the Unknown Soldier issues, so I have issues 151 and up. Hi, is it Rangers Lee or Rangers Sly? I'm not sure which. I think I've heard people on other channels say Ranger Sly, but thanks for joining us here. Yeah, so here is the multi-pack with the Detective 433. On this side, I'm trying to get so you can't see the glare. And then again, the Supergirl number 4 on the other side. And the middle, as I mentioned, Sly. Okay, I'll have that in my head. Ranger Sly. All right. Thanks for joining us. I'm gonna, once this is done, I'll be putting this up on the channel, so anything you missed, you'll be able to watch. I've just been showing off some of the other multi-packs. This is actually the last one. The book in the middle is Star Spangled War Stories. I think it's 181, maybe. It's around there. I do have doubles of both that and the Supergirl for reading. The Detective Comics, the 433, was just sort of a bonus for me because it's a really cool book to have on here. I don't actually collect Batman stuff, but it looks really cool. And I'm, I guess, one of the fewer people that actually really likes that logo. So it's just really neat to have that. So those are my multi-packs. As I mentioned before I sign off in a little while, I'm also going to talk about creating my comic for a little bit because I need to test some of the functionality on the screen sharing. But before I get to that part, anyone have any questions? Anything you want me to talk about before I move on to my own comic? I've got a bunch of stuff. I've been recording videos that I haven't actually posted yet because I've been getting so many comics in. So I've already recorded like 3 more of the videos where I'm unboxing like the new issues that I've gotten in as back issues. So I could show you a tease. I just got a Night Nurse number 3 in one of the lots that I got. I actually have a higher grade copy of this already, so I'll probably be trading this to someone. All right, so as I mentioned, I've got this online convention coming up on this weekend. I really have no idea how it's going to work. I've set up a digital booth. It's called Stay at Home Con. So if you Google that, it's a totally online convention, but there's going to be these little virtual booths in Artist Alley. Hi, Tony. Thanks for coming. See, Ranger Sly is asking, where do I find these old packs? Well, you can get some on eBay. If you search for eBay, there are some usually available. I've gotten these from several different sources. The G.I. Joe pack that I showed at the beginning, I got at a store. They just happened to have it there really cheap. The other packs, I think I actually bought all the rest of my packs on the CGC forums. If you're not part of the CGC forums, even if you don't like CGC books, there's a lot of really interesting discussion about collecting more than reading. It's about collecting comics. They have a section of the boards there where people sell directly to other board members, and there's all sorts of things. I've seen everything up to and including Detective Comics 27 sold on the boards in these private transactions. Sometimes people just have all sorts of weird stuff that they put up there. And there was a thread where a couple times, different threads where people had these multi-packs. So the Battlestar Galactica and the Micronauts multi-packs I got from one person. And then both of the Archie packs and the Supergirl Detective pack, those all 3 I bought at once from another person on there. So this it's a great place to see. I mean, a lot of times I'll go there and I'll just look at the comics that are being sold because most of them are so far, a lot of them are so far out of my price range. I've seen threads where there's like Flash number 1 and, All American 16 and All Star 8 and stuff all in the same thread for sale from a big time dealer. But Yeah, so hopefully that helps. You can find some of them on eBay. Prices are all over the place there. Let's see. Kyle's asking favorite obscure comic characters from Marvel, DC, Archie. Well, Archie, I did a video that almost nobody's watched, but about some of my original art. Behind me, I've got Trula Twist is probably my favorite semi-obscure Archie character. She's not obscure if you happen to read Jughead Volume 2, but to anyone else in the world. Hi, thanks for coming, Werewolf. Appreciate you stopping by. So I would say, yeah, Trula Twist is a character that I'm a big fan of. Which reminds me, the artist here, Rex W. Lindsay, he just put up for sale one of my Grail pieces of original art, but unfortunately it's bundled with 3 other covers and 2 complete issues. So there's like 48 pages of original art and you have to buy it all at once, so it's too far out of my price range. Obscure comic characters from Marvel and DC. I mean, I tend to gravitate to the more offbeat characters. So like a lot of the main parts of my collection are like a lot of 70s like anti-heroes. They're not really obscure, but characters like Jonah Hex, the Unknown Soldier, Deathlock, Warlord, those are all sort of favorites of mine. I'm trying to think of some actually obscure characters from those companies. Some of the supporting characters from some of those titles I'm a big fan of. There's a character in An Unknown Soldier named Chat Noir, the Black Cat, who helps Unknown Soldier on some of his missions. He's really a cool character. Marvel, I mean, Night Nurse isn't really obscure anymore, I guess, to hardcore collectors, but I actually love the series Night Nurse. Not in like an ironic fashion. I like soap operas, and to me, it's like the best, most pure soap opera comic that I've ever read. They clearly had no idea how to market it or find an audience for it, but for me, it's top quality. I unironically love Night Nurse. It's such a cool series. So I'm not sure if that fully answered your question. I'm having a little bit of a hard time thinking of really obscure characters off the top of my head that I like. I like a lot of short series. I just finished putting together a complete run of Gunhawks. Can't say those are my favorite because there's some really interesting social commentary, let's say, in Gunhawks. And at some point, I'm going to do a whole video about Gary Friedrich's output from 1972 because I think there's some really fascinating things going on if you look at his titles from that year in terms of artists' rights and what is appropriate and what's not appropriate to borrow from other sources. So anyway, I'll do a whole video on Gary Friedrich's 1972 comics at some point. Like Combat Kelly is a series that I think is just totally out there. So yeah, all right. I've got a few more minutes before I need to sign off. So let me just talk a little bit about my comic. Again, I just have to test some of the functionality. There's like a share screen because on Sunday at 10:30, I'm going to be doing a longer live stream as part of this convention, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about creating my comic. It's called The Crime Busters, and let's see if I share this screen. I think we can see it here. So hopefully you're seeing this. My display here is a little bit weird. I can't actually see what you guys are looking at while I have this up. But I've got my cover here for issue 3 of Crime Busters. I've just started working on this. I just finished drawing this over the weekend. And so here's the regular cover for number 3. I tried to do a Marvel style like banner with the title of the issue down here. I had to get a little bit of help on the color from my wife because I'm colorblind, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I also finished, this is the variant cover for a Kickstarter exclusive variant. This is actually a Golden Age character. It was very obscure. Talk about obscure. This is a Golden Age public domain character named Granny Gumshoe. She appeared in National Comics from issues 57 to 71. And I absolutely love the character, so I'm revamping her and doing my own spin on her as part of this next issue. And this carries over the numbering from the Golden Age series Boy Comics, which is why this is number 122 instead of 130. This is patterned after an Alphonse Mucha painting. There's certain things about his art that I think really work with the style. I have like a thick line, thick outer line for my characters. It's something that I took from one of my favorite artists, Harry Lucy, and Mucha's art was the same way. Had a chance to visit the Alphonse Mucha Museum in Prague a couple years ago now, and was really inspired by his work. Here's the back cover. I've got some frames here. The blue line won't be on the printed version. It's just to help me draw. And these are all Golden Age public domain characters that I'm going to be showing up in this next issue. It's Granny Gumshoe. This is the ACG character, John Force Magic Agent. And this is a Star Flag undercover girl. I patterned their redesigns after Arthur Miller and Marilyn Monroe because my series takes place in the mid-50s. And then here's I've just started working on the first page. I'm doing a Golden Age style, so I'm using the cover as the image. And all the issues of Boy Comics would have this sort of like speech at the beginning written by the writer Charles Biro, where he sort of is giving you this morality lesson that you're supposed to learn from the issue. So I do that, sort of carry all of this over. So that's just a little bit about my comic. Oh yes, yes. Thanks to Brookie Monster. That's my wife. Hello. Yeah. So just real quick, the Granny Gumshoe. You'll see here. Let me pull this back up here. If I can do this, share the screen. She had this. You'll notice that I did on her umbrella. There's a little face on it. That's because Granny Gumshoe, in her first appearance, she fights this puppet made out of magic wood that brings into life. And she's kind of like, I see her as sort of like a really sadistic Mary Poppins, because the way she defeats the puppet is she finds the magic tree that he's made from, and she chops the tree down and kills him. But then she takes the puppet's body and she turns it into a desk lamp for her office. And it's just, I was reading that, I was like, oh man. So that sort of informed how I redesigned the character. And so I've used the puppet's head as the handle of her umbrella for my redesign. Yes, Ranger Sly, hands are bad. And one thing, they're very hard to draw. So one thing about working digitally is that I actually take photos of my own hands. I have dozens of pictures of my hands that I've taken in all these different like Kirby-esque poses, and then I can sort of use them as a model. She did. She gleefully murdered a tree. Yeah. So anyway, that's it. I think for today, it's been almost a half hour, and I think if you know from watching my videos that I could probably just keep talking for the rest of the evening until I just pass out from exhaustion, because I do tend to ramble on when I get talking. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I'm going to sign off now. Again, I'm doing another one of these live streams on Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, which is the only time slot that was available for the convention, because the convention is actually being hosted in The Hague, is where the headquarters for the website is. So all of the other time slots were like at 5 in the morning for me. So, yeah, there you have it. Thanks for joining. I'm also going to upload this soon, hopefully tonight, so you can watch all the parts that you missed with some of the, again, the beginning, and go over all of the multi-packs. So thanks so much. I really appreciate everyone, and I'll see you next time.